For once, I'm early. I used to be early and on time all the time. This is making me late. You know, I used to start thinking that weekends were made in China because they don't last very long. Isn't that right? Morning, Dual Brain. Nice to have you here. Thanks for joining into the stream this morning. You know, Vincent van Gogh's famous painting was stolen from a museum just the other day, and now they call it a Vincent van Gogh. That's right. I'm throwing a COVID-19 party this weekend. None of you are invited. I was going to go Greyhound racing this weekend, but I decided against it because I'm not that fast. All right, my weekend's looking like a poorly organized herb garden. I've got nothing but time on my hands here this morning. Nice to see you here, Ed, the Dual Brain. You, my ambassador of Quan, the ambassador of Magic the Gathering for Brody Alfonso. It's nice to have you here. Always enjoy hearing from you and seeing what is going down in the world of Magic the Gathering and finance. If you haven't checked out the Dual Brain channel, I suggest you do it. It's a great place to connect with some fantastic people, fan-loving folks who love the game as much as we do and appreciate a good shtick about Magic cards every now and again. So if you haven't headed over there just yet, make sure you do it and hit the like button, maybe the subscribe button. It feels good to do it. Wherever you are, I want to thank you for tuning in here on the show. It's nice to have you here again. If you're a fan of Magic the Gathering who likes to play cards, who likes to buy products online, who likes to shuffle up stacks and crack open packs of Magic the Gathering cards, it's not that hard to tune in here on the morning show. Everyone's invited. You're all welcome here to just sit down, grab yourself a cup of coffee, enjoy the stream. If you know what I mean, we're going to do a little bit of discussion here. Cardboard discussion is what we are hoping to do here this morning. I'm just going to bring some stuff up for you here, because we got to warm up here this morning. Got to get the chops limbered up. We got to get ready to do the stream. It should be a good one. It's getting into the weekend. It's Friday. Yabba dabba doo die. Just about yabba dabba doo time. We're getting ready to slide down that dinosaur's tail. It should be a nice way to start the Friday. Are you heading to Friday Night Magic tonight? If you are, make sure you bring a friend. If you can't make it, send a friend over to Brody's place. All right, and before Monday comes to punish us for the things that we do on the weekend, let's sit down and enjoy a little bit of chat this morning. What do you call a stoned Canadian before the weekend? Friday. That's right. Nice to see all my Canadian friends in the chat. Some folks tuning in from Connecticut, all over the world. You may be coming from Las Vegas. Maybe you're in Ohio. Wherever you may be, I want to thank you folks for tuning in and joining me. I'm going to have a little sip of coffee here, and we're going to get into some stuff here this morning. It should be fun. That's right. The gardener's entering a bonsai plant contest this weekend, and I'll be rooting for him. All right, let's warm up this morning with some AI-generated magic cards. Let's take a look at some of the stuff that's offered to us in the world of Robo Rosewater. The world of AI is advancing at such a rapid rate. It's beginning to be a little controversial. Anyone can do it. Anyone can use it. And it seems like it's gathering some waves on the internet and social media. Some of the stuff that people are using the AI for may be a little bit unconscionable, but don't worry. Sit down, relax. We're going to be using the AI for good purposes only. All right. We want to see what kind of Magic the Gathering cards we can get out of it. We checked this morning just to see. If you haven't joined us once before when we do this stretch just to get warmed up, get Brody warmed up and feeling loose here this morning. We're going to look at some cards over at Robo Rosewater. The card is playable any way whatsoever. We'll give it a pass, and you're going to hear this sound. The sound of the dinger. And if the card is got any gibberish on it whatsoever, if it's not playable, if it's missing something important that makes up a Magic card, we'll fail it. I'm going to fail it right now. You'll hear this sound, the sound of the buzzing. Cousin. Of course, it's nice to be here this morning. No nefarious action. Hey, good morning, Murray. Murray, nice to see you. Okay, so a little bit of update on the shenanigans that transpired 2 weekends ago. We're heading over to the cafe again this weekend on Saturday. Had a bit of an altercation. Yeah, salt. The salt was flying, right? Not a salty Magic player, just a salty person coming off the street and started interrupting the game, but we're going to give it another shot here this weekend. So the official meet-up place for the bros on the weekend is going to be the Sweet Cafe. That's right. That's where we head out. Soul Sweet, Soul Sisters. Hey, sisters, want to get some more Magic card playing time with the friends. So we're going to give that a try. We tried the Coliseum last weekend. Coliseum was good as an alternate to the Sweet Cafe because we had a little bit of an incident until the folks were able to go down there and talk to the owners. Now, owners are okay with it. They've sort of come around and realized that had nothing to do with the Magic players. This was just a random off the street shenanigan that came in and made a big scene. I thought there might be a table flip coming whilst this person was in there. So we kind of went to an alternate location at the Coliseum. It was a really fun time. This town is really starving for a local game store. We could use it. But to see the amount of community sport that came out last Saturday was incredible. Probably had a dozen Magic players that showed up and wanted to play cards and just have a good time. So we went to the Coliseum. It was a good time. Thanks to the folks over there for having us. We'll try and do it again. I'm going to put something together for this weekend. I'll have 2 decks, 2 commander decks. The Master out in the street, they call him Brody. Good morning, killers. Nice to see you here. The Mill Master and Cardboard Splendor tuning in here this morning. Let's look at some AI generated Magic. Turdbird. OMG. I can almost fail this one before it starts. It's no good. It's got no name on it. I have no name. I am no one. This card has no name. So based on that, I think we got to get rid of it just on principle alone. But let's try it. Let's see here. This giant with no name, low IQ, right? All right, it's a 4/2. It's a red and 4 to play it. It's an artifact creature giant. I think this is the first artifact giant we've got. Is it? Is it not? The card with no name? I come to the desert on a card with no name. It feels good to get out in the rain. Well, singing na 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 na. This one has assist. When it dies, if it had no -1/-1 counters on it, return to the battlefield with -1/-1 counter. Isn't that Persis? No, we need a name. We need a no-name cycle, right? That's hilarious. Let's fail it. Sad news. I saw something on the internet just the other day. Yesterday, actually, there was a post that came up, and I haven't checked it yet, but apparently there will be no more unsets in Magic the Gathering for the foreseeable future. This is going to make you really sad, Murray, but I did see a post on the Twitter files That said, going forward in the future, there will be no more plans for any unsets for any of you folks who like the unsets. Apparently, the unsets are a thing of the past, not going to happen anymore. So this chubby little boy, the fist fatter Hydra. Oh my goodness! Last weekend, Mrs. Alfonso's soccer match, she made a sweet, sweet save. She's definitely a keeper. All right, this fist fatter Hydra, fatter than the regular Hydras that you'll see. This one's a 3/3 human soldier. It can't be a human and a Hydra at the same time. Whose fist is fatter than this Hydra? Fisting, fatting, 1 red and 2. Cumulative upkeep put a -1/-1 counter on target creature. So any creature? Wow, that seems pretty powerful. And then sacrifice the fist fatter Hydra. Regenerate target Gobloon. Seems okay. The cumulative upkeep put a -1/-1 counter on the target creature kind of breaks this, because you can just put it on your other opponent's creatures. I know, fisting, fatting, I don't believe it. People like unsets. As long as people like it, Wizards will keep it on the back burner and bring it back when the hype makes it a dollar option. Yeah, it could be some unreliable news, but I did see it posted. What was it? MTG. I'll find it. I'll find it for you folks. Let's fail this one. Well, okay, let's keep it. It's just overpowered, right? Nah, all it means is it won't be called un. All right, is this one overpowered? Way overpowered. We can't put some people, yeah. I put underpowered, right? A little bit more. The fist of failing here this morning. Good morning, Huckleberry Hound. How are you doing? Nice to see you here this morning, joining in the chat. And anybody around the world who wants to discuss a little Magic cards. We're just warming up here with looking at some hilarity here online, some AI-generated cards. This is Squawkin's Helm. All right, what are you squawking about here this morning, Brody? I don't know. All right. I'm heading to a charity event this weekend for female amputees. The place is going to be crawling with chicks. Let's check this out. Squawkin's Helm, 2 black and 2 for an equipment. 1 colorless to tap this. Whenever an equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, that player creates a 3/1 Phyrexian Rat Werewolf creature token. That player? This seems counterproductive, right? Why would you want to give your opponent a 3/1 creature? I don't know. Yeah. I might be watching the Harry Potter films this weekend. I watched them over the holidays, but it seems a little bit unrealistic. I mean, a ginger with 2 friends just doesn't seem too likely. But what about this AI-generated Magic card? Let's give it a pass. All right. Even though it's counterproductive, this thing is going to give your opponents the 3/1s. Why do we want to do that? We don't. We want the 3/1s for ourselves. This helmet could be a little bit better. Fair OP, underpowered. Kind of silly that way. And Wirewood's Eternal, this is where we left off yesterday. This one's sorcery. For 2 red and 2, return target creature card with mana value X or less from your graveyard to the battlefield, where X is the number of creature cards in your graveyard. A reanimate spell in red. We need that. Why not? All right. Do you know why I stay up late on the weekends? Because sleep is for the weak. Let's move on. This one, we saw it yesterday. The P is silent. Why can't you hear a psychologist urinate? Because the P is silent. Ding ding. Uno punto for you, my man. Let's do some puns here this morning, right? Have a little bit of fun. All right. A lot of times I'm depressed throughout the week. So the weekend comes and it gets worse, mostly on Saturday. Who we got? All right, folks. Thanks for tuning in. Everybody tuning in around the world and joining me on the morning show. If you like to talk shop, you like to talk stocks, you like to talk the prices of Magic cards, let me do it for you. If there's enough information out there that you can get on your own, why not tune in at home? Or if you've got me on the dash of the car next to the coffee pot, no matter where you are, I want to thank you guys for tuning in. We're looking for the latest news in the world of Magic the Gathering. We got to see it. Some card interactions. And some of the spoilers that are coming out are definitely making headlines. People are talking about some interesting disguise ability that's happening in the new Murders at Karlov Manor set. So that's always interesting. And want to hope to see some more card interactions with some of these very, very interesting new spoilers that are coming out in the world of MTG. I like it. Let's see what we can find for you folks here this morning by way of Stock Desk. Let's head on over to the Stock Desk here and get an article up for you folks this morning. But before we do that, I'm just looking for my post that I found very interesting. This one here, MTG Insider, breaking news. Do you believe this or not? Breaking news, MTG unlikely to do another unset. Lead designer reveal. So no more unsets. This is a possibility. Mr. Billy Hill, thank you for joining me. Dang, I'm on my way late to the stream. No, the stream doesn't start until you get here, Mr. Billy Hill. So we don't even get up that hill until the hillbilly shows up here. It's nice to see you here. Good morning, Brody and friends. Good to have the Twiddler here. This guy cracks a lot of packs. How are your wrists doing from the other night? Cracking a lot of packs and battling it out over at Twiddler's place. I had a little bit of fun there on a weeknight. Maybe stayed up just a touch too late. Do you believe this headline? Are we going to see any more unsets? Has anybody out there confirmed it? Could be possible, but there's folks that say once it'll be a little bit more profitable, then they probably go back to it. The snow plows are out today. I can hear them. The beeping. Backup beeper. All right, it's Friday. What are you guys up to this weekend? Are you heading to a local game store? You got plans? Are you going to a hockey game? Maybe you guys have something to do. It's not profitable because the last one was super trash. It's amazing that the variety of opinions that we get on the unsets. I think they're quite interesting, but it's some people hate them. It's quite fascinating to see, and some people love them. Unsets should be like original 3 Star Wars films. Nostalgia needs some time. All right, well, cards to watch for the upcoming Final Fantasy set. We've got an interesting article here. Inconspicuous scoops. Here's a scoop on this one, right? The only thing good in the last unset was the lands. Jason Comenetto bringing us an article here from the Stock Desk. Cards to watch for the upcoming Final Fantasy set. Did we know that there was an upcoming Final Fantasy set? Of course we did. This is actually the first that I heard of it, and I looked at the release schedule, and somehow I missed this. There's not a lot of sets coming out this year that I can relate to. It's funny to say that. I don't know if you folks feel the same way, but did you hear about the racing snail who got rid of his shell? He thought it would make him faster, but it just made him sluggish. All right, this is an interesting article here. We like to read these articles for you folks here this morning, so let's do that. Let's definitely catch up Let's disappear. Yes, let's disappear completely, and then we'll reappear for you folks. Look at that, just like a vanishing trick. It made his cargo, right? How about the more sets in the foreseeable future? I like it. All right, here in this column by Jason Cominetto, I would like to read it for you. I find it often beneficial to think outside the box when it comes to picking up solid cards for speculations. We're talking about the Final Fantasy set that's coming up in the future. People usually only focus on what's coming out in the next set or two, but the constant bombardment of new products makes it nearly impossible to think past this short term after all. No doubt. No more talk about production slowing down for the foreseeable future, right? All right. Well, Mr. Caminetto is here to tell us that one set coming out in 2025 is going to get some more details soon. Before everyone turns their attention towards it, you might want to consider picking up some of the cards laid out here in this article, the upcoming Final Fantasy set due to something next year. All right, mind you, these spec picks are based on, well, speculation. That's what we like to do here. All right, we want to see what people are speculating on. What cards are diamonds? We want to reach into the garbage can and find the diamonds laying down there that people have passed over and have no appreciation for. So, meaning every prediction in this article could be incorrect. So, disclaimer, this could be a booby trap, right? But the folks over the stock desk seem to do a pretty good job putting together lists for us. But if you're trying to pad out some trades in between now and then, and when some more details are revealed, which I predict might coincide with the upcoming February 29th release of Final Fantasy VII Rebirth in build hype, these are some of what to look out for. Now, this is the reason that I hadn't heard of the Final Fantasy set coming out, because it's not coming out till 2025. That's going to be not on the 2024 release schedule, the 2025 release schedule. So level up. Can we see past this? I'm sorry, Infinity was good. I think this is the one before that. So level up. If you remember this mechanic, this was quite interesting. It's almost like pseudo planeswalker-ish on a creature. I remember a card like Hex Drinker was a level up card. It was quite interesting and very powerful. If you could level it up all the way, it would definitely do some stuff. I think it got hexproof and protection from everything. So Final Fantasy may be the ultimate role-playing game series, and what is more indicative of RPGs than leveling up. Starting at level 1 and working our characters up and growth is crucial to the appearance, and I would honestly be shocked if we didn't see any presence of leveling up one way or another. It would be really interesting to have a creature know something like fire and see it level up to Fira Firaga as the board state progresses. And I think they will try to find a way to make this work. That being said, everything that holds value from leveling up holds that value because they are useful for all sorts of counter shenanigans. Well, if you like shenanigans, you know I do. Things like Inexorable Tide, Doubling Season aren't going to skyrocket again due to the return of this mechanic, since their value is so ubiquitous. Rather, imagine, see some new cards that help specifically curtail leveling up process that just isn't just proliferate. So some cards to remember. What do we got here? We got the Brimstone Mage, the Human Shaman, Echo Mage, another Human Wizard, and then we got the Human Cleric by way of Hedron Field Purist. For all you Magic the Gathering purists out there, any Final Fantasy fans in the house today? Final Fantasy fans in the family of the show. Lots of people like Final Fantasy. So let's take a look at this article just a little bit more. With this in mind, we like to think that a lot of cards could benefit from this, while stuff like Lighthouse Chronologist and Hex Drinker might benefit from whatever may come. Their level up cost is already just 1 mana, so I'm thinking that some of the stranger choices that have higher level up costs might find their place in the limelight. This things like Brimstone Mage, Echo Mage, Joraga Tree Speaker, and Hedron Field Purist might start seeing some more play in certain commander circles. This would also be a great opportunity to pick up some copies of Venerated Teacher. You can reasonably find the foils sitting at less than 50 cents, and since this is the only printing of the card and if it doesn't see a reprint in Final Fantasy set, then the level up mechanic indeed returns. There's a chance it may be sought after. Which one is this one? Venerated Teacher, a 2/2 for 1 blue, and 2, when Venerated Teacher enters the battlefield, put 2 level counters on each creature you control with level up. Wow. So this could be something very good if the level up mechanic comes back. And this is only 50 cents. Sit-ins. Not me, but a friend of mine that played 24 hours of Final Fantasy without a memory card and then went to buy one and save the file, but it would not take and lost all his progress. Sad. I remember as a kid turning away from card play to play Final Fantasy. So maybe the set will bring fans that left back, and Assassin's Creed is the next blue-black, yes? Fallout is going to be fun, I hope. I do too. Well, the Venerated Teacher seems like something that goes well with Level Up. Hasn't seen a reprint since the last time we saw Level Up, and the party mechanic may come back in 2025 if we're talking Final Fantasy. Another core part of Final Fantasy is not just leveling up your main character, but also spending time and strengthening your entire party as well. Who's coming to the party? While you grow together as a team, I imagine we'll see some sort of mechanic present that powers up your creatures to a relative to what other types of creatures you have on your side, although wizards wouldn't have to look much further than their existing party mechanic introduced in Zendikar Rising. The party mechanic, Party Boy, gives you benefits for having a cleric, rogue, warrior, or wizard on the field, and the best benefits coming from having a full party. All right, I think we've established we've got a full party here this morning with all the folks chatting here this morning. Thanks for joining. We've got at least one Hillbilly, one Cardboard Splendor, one Milled Masper, one Tommy Siddons, and a Dual Brain. Our party is full. And a Murray Cooper. We got double party status. All right, this only makes sense to implement the upcoming Final Fantasy set party mechanics, since when you're playing these games, you're always trying to go for a balanced, diverse team, and usually want to have a party similarly composed of classes like those laid out in this Magic the Gathering mechanic. Cards featuring the party mechanic here. We got Coveted Prize for a black and 4 for this sorcery. Costs 1 less to cast for each creature in your party. Search your library for a card. Put it into your hand, then shuffle your library. If you have a full party, you may cast that spell with commander mana cost 4 or less from your hand without paying its mana cost. Very interesting. It's like a tutor or Beseech the Mirror. And then this follow, Tajuru Paragon, the elf. A 3/2 elf for 2 mana. This is like even better. The party mechanics sucked, right? Tajuru Paragon is also a cleric, rogue, warrior, and wizard. Kicker 3. When Paragon enters the battlefield, if it was kicked, kick this to the curb. Reveal the top 6 from your library, and you may put a land. Put a card on the battlefield that shares a type with it from among them from your hand, and put the rest on the bottom in any order. Speculation here this morning, Hillbilly. All right, current cards that benefit from the party are, to be quite frank, a bit underwhelming. I guess you kind of nailed that, right? But there is room to expand and more or less build this mechanic from the ground up in a newer, exciting way. In my mind, Coveted Prize is probably the most powerful card that benefits from having members in your party full. But even in its current form, it's only fringely playable. Who's playing the party mechanic in Commander these days? Probably nobody. But at some point, it may come back. If we're looking, see what cards can benefit from reintroduction of the party mechanic, it's not those that benefit from the but those that help set it up, namely Tajiru Paragon. This rare from Zendikar Rising basically gives you a full party off itself. And why is that? Because it counts as a cleric, rogue, warrior, and wizard. It's everything. Can't really decide. Just everything to all people, right? This thing sets up you as a full party just on its own. It's a 3-2 for 2, which is a little better than just a standard bear. Fills up your party, and if there's any upcoming cards in the Final Fantasy set that require a full party to activate, this will definitely be the easiest way to assemble that. Again, this is all just speculation, but for less than 50 cents, for an extended art foil version of this card, it might be worth keeping an eye out for this one. And Legendary Creature Abundance. We've seen a lot recently, especially with the Lord of the Rings Tales of Middle-earth, but since every Final Fantasy game has a unique roster of characters, I imagine this will be another set brimming with legendary creatures. There can only be one Cloud Strife or Sephiroth on your side of the field, and at least in my mind, so why not to invest early in cards that you know can break this rule, while things like Helm of the Host and Sakashima of 1,000 Faces will no doubt accomplish this. Their values are already inflated and unique, unlikely to change. If you're trying to find more affordable cards that will also get you there, look no further than Spark Double or Irenicus Vial Duplication. The duplication spells are pretty decent. You play Inala with Legendary Wizard, so Mirror Box is necessary. Mirror Box. I want to look at this Mirror Box. Okay, Mirror Box is 3. The legend rule does not apply to permanents you control. Each legendary creature you control gets 1/1. So it's an anthem for legendaries. And each non-token creature on the battlefield gets +1/+1 for each other creature you control with the same name as that creature. Are you playing that in, Tommy, are you playing that in Commander? Probably, right? Legendary Matters. If you're talking about Legendary Matters, you know a card that's really good is Captain Sisay. Mirror Box is OP. Yeah, if we're talking about Legendary Matters, we might want to take a look at Captain Sisay. I know T Freezy is playing it, and it's a card that could just win on the spot. Pretty great. Hey, Coach, thanks for joining us here this morning. Nice to see you. Coach is in the house. Oui. Mais oui, Tommy Siddons. All right, reprinted in Ravnica Remastered and Commander Mastered, Spark Double is simple but effective clone that ignores the limitations of the legendary rule. And yesterday we talked about Krenko's Buzz Cutter and targeting and how that card actually gets around targeting so you can deal with cards with hexproof, which is very, very interesting. So choosing a card in play or targeting a card in play are two different things. I opened a Spark Double in a box of War of the Spark Japanese just the other day, last weekend with Murray Cooper. We were searching for Dovin's Veto, and we found it. It was good. And I also found a Spark Double, and Murray's like, that's a good card. I had to read the English version. But yes, Spark Double, very good. And these creatures that come into play, or these cards that come into play where you choose, they come into play as a copy, they don't target. So you have a chance to target something with hexproof where that can't be the target of spells or effects. I wonder if it also gets around ward. I think it probably does. Because some of the ward costs are quite high. Sometimes you got to play up to 3 mana or sacrifice a legendary permanent. The ward, getting around ward is quite difficult to do. But a card like Spark Double may be able to get around it because it enters as a copy. And Spark Double being a simple and effective clone that ignores the limitations of the legendary rule. And with all the different variations that now exist, it's more affordable than ever, and it doesn't completely shut down the legendary rule for you like Shakashima, the 1,000 Faces does. But at roughly 1 out of 10 monetary costs with the same mana value and the inclusion of a +1/+1 counter, it more than gets the job done. The same can be said for Irenicus Vial Duplication, which is also the same mana value, or gives our duplicate creature flying instead of a much stronger upside. Irenicus Vial Duplication has the added benefit of only being printed in one set and invoking the name of a character from another property, Dungeons and Dragons, meaning it's much less likely to see a reprint soon and makes for a safer long-term hold. Sitting at less than $4, this is a clone spell that is rightfully sought after and only has room to grow between now and the Final Fantasy release. Also, I would be remiss if I didn't mention the potential of Mirror Box. Tommy seems to like this card. You like this? They should make a mechanic called Hexbreaker that can target Shroud and Hexproof and Ward. That's definitely like Gaming Bob alluded to that yesterday when we were talking about the same card, Krenko's Buzz Cutter, how it doesn't target. You choose a land, you choose a player and destroy one land that player controls. Each player controls. The ambiguity behind rewording cards so they don't say they don't say target on them. It's kind of annoying having the ambiguity there. Why not just make a mechanic that deals with hexproof? Or if you wanted to be able to target something, this is coming from the discussion that I saw online. If you wanted to be able to target something like Lotus Field in the first place, why put hexproof on it rather than be ambiguous on future card interactions that get around it, but not making it obvious and apparent? Players have to get the gotcha feeling once somebody understands the rules and how to get around hexproof using some of these cards that are worded funny. Why not make a mechanic that's called Hexbreaker, like Tommy says? Just make it right out in the open. Glaring Spotlight. Does that remove hexproof? Can't be countered. Spells deal with ward. So this is Mirror Box. Tommy, you like this card, hey? From Kamigawa? The legend rule doesn't apply to you. If you're making a Legendary Matters deck, this is probably an include. It's currently around $1.50 and is a powerhouse in decks that can utilize it properly. Most Rat Colony and Relentless Rat decks, and if there is an abundance of legendary creatures in the Final Fantasy set, there's a chance that this can go up a little bit. But unlike the last few cards discussed that have an observable effect on cast, this can be a big do-nothing spell until the right moment. When it really starts to change the game, it wouldn't go out of my way to pick up a huge amount of these. But again, if you're looking to pad out trade value, you could do a lot worse than this. Or if you ever think about playing around the legendary rule, this is something you might just want to have in your collection anyway. So you play MTG, name every legendary creature. I couldn't do it. We got two other quick picks here. We're talking about the release, Glaring Spotlight. We're talking about the release of Final Fantasy that's coming up in 2025. A little ahead of its time, maybe, to be discussing it, but that's kind of how this stuff works. You want to, if you're speculating on Magic cards, it's kind, you got to kind of be thinking a year or two ahead. That's why I'm over the last couple of years, it's really changed my mindset on buy listing. I don't typically like to buy list within 6 months to a year of the set's release any cards that I may have opened from it, because you just can't tell if there's something in there that's going to have synergy with one or two sets down the road. And I think it's done deliberately so that the weak hands get flushed out, so to speak. So it wouldn't be a bad idea to try to get ahead of it. And like I say, I've slowed down on the frequency of buy listing. Even if I have cards from Zendikar that I opened not too long ago, it's probably worth holding on to the most The majority of those cards that I opened just for another 6 months to 12 months to see what comes out this year, because as soon as some support cards are printed, then you might be selling yourself short on the buy list. Stores know this. So that's why you see sometimes they have a hot list where they're giving an extra bit of store credit for cards that they feel will have good interactions with upcoming sets, such as the Final Fantasy set. So we're trying to read this article and get a little bit of a taste for what might be coming and discuss some potential pickups. These are two other quick picks. There's three biggest predictions that I have for the set. Ooh. But there is so much potential content Wizards can draw from with these games that there are a few other quick picks I would like to bring up for your attention to get you thinking on the possibilities of this upcoming set. Equipment. Yes, it makes sense and it stands to reason that equipment would be very popular in a Final Fantasy set. I couldn't agree more. And with such iconic weapons as the Buster Sword, Masamune, and the Gunblade from Final Fantasy 7 and 8, there's a small chance for a pseudo-equipment theme. These are all weapons that narratively require great strength to handle, so they will probably have high equip costs, meaning that anything that makes things equip for 0 or auto-equip, like Pure Steel Paladin and Sigarda's Aid, could also see an increase in play. Summons in Final Fantasy, these are spells, but they're also creatures. So I'm thinking there's room for some overlap with these in the form of an adventure-style mechanic. There somehow exist as creatures and spells on the same piece of cardboard, but summons are also usually overly powerful. So I imagine that we will see the return of legendary instants and sorceries, but with a twist. I like a lemon twist, in my legendary sorceries and my my cappuccino. I make it myself right back there at the bar. Anybody name that video? I make a real nice cappuccino with a lime and twist. Make it myself back there at the bar. So I imagine there may be a twist to some of these legendary instants or sorceries. In the case of a high mana value historic creature spell hybrid card, anything to help cheat it out will become relevant, including oddball picks like Thran's Temporal Gateway or even Harry Brown. Keep an eye out for cards like these. Let me just remind ourselves, what does the Thran Temporal Gateway do? This 4 mana legendary artifact. It's legendary. You pay 4 and tap and put a historic permanent card from your hand onto the battlefield. Historic includes artifacts, legendaries, and sagas. Historic. Perhaps we'll get some more historic support. So a couple of more quick picks. Sigarda's Aid, of course, this was big in Hammer time, something that lets you cast aura and equipment spells as though they have flash. And if equipment enters the battlefield under your control, you can attach it to target creature you control, just auto-equip. And Pure Steel enters the battlefield and you may draw a card. It's got Metalcraft and giving your equipment a 0 equip cost. Pure Steel's super popular in modern Hammer time as well as Sigarda's Aid. So you can't touch this. Whoa. In conclusion, Final Fantasy has so much depth of content that I could go on and on with the potential speculations based on aspects of the games that they could implement. Myself, I was not a Final Fantasy buff. I'm not a big Final Fantasy player, so I have no insight for you folks. I have to rely on other sources and you to let me know if this has got a hot, cold, or mid temperature to it. I haven't touched on what they can do with materia, airships, and so much more. The sky is truly the limit for this set if you're looking to fill out your carts and trades between now and then, and when more information is revealed, there are some solid choices to look out for. So thank you, Jason Caminetto. A nice article from Jason, longtime lover of Magic, falling in love with the game at 7th edition as well as an EDH enthusiast. I'm going to have to give this guy a follow over on the Twitter space. His favorite card is Rofalos, Llanowar Emissary, likes to make green mana. but he firmly believes that Mana Drain is the best card. I like it. Clever Impersonator, more as a 4-drop clone. I like, oh, Final Fantasy VIII was your jam? Myself, I don't know too much about Final Fantasy. The lore. I mean, I've played it. Hey, Murray? So you folks have all heard about Murphy's Law, right? Anything that can go wrong will go wrong. But has anybody heard of Cole's Law? It's thinly sliced cabbage. That's right. Cole's Law making a comeback with fish and chips and fries here on the morning show. I like to see it. Let's see what else we got happening at the in the article space here this morning. Any news with Hasbro, the folks over there? Perhaps. I did see a Rudy video just the other day. I'm gonna have a little sip of coffee. Did anybody else catch that video saying that the people are already upset at the secret layer fulfillment because secret layer fulfillment has already begun. People have already started getting their secret layers and it's sold out really, really quickly. So that's what's happening. I did saw I did saw I did see the saw I did see the Rudy video. So apparently we're into a according to that fella, and I was actually good news. I was actually quite happy to hear some positivity around the space of Magic the Gathering, saying that Wizards is actually, for him to say that Wizards is actually trying to make Magic the Gathering have some collectability is refreshing, and all the signals that were discussed on last monologue with that fellow there gave us an indication that there's folks that are upset with the new fulfillment platform for the new secret layer, that people have already started to get their secret layers and the first one sold out. So it's going to be a scalper's paradise and people will actually start to be able to make money on the secondary market. Now, this is sort of one thing that came to mind was like, does anybody notice how things tend to shift from one extreme to the other? Like things might get so bad in one direction that finally it like comes back the other way like a rubber band, and then there's like a sweet spot in the middle, and then it may go too far the other way until people just start to get a little upset, and then it comes back, and it's just those extreme swings with pendulum that are really hard to stomach sometimes. They seem to be swinging from one extreme to another so hard over a long-term period, it really makes for a bumpy ride. Like this constant printing of new sets that it's impossible to keep up with. It's impossible to buy every product, and it's impossible for me to budget enough to buy some of these products at the new prices. So I have to sit them out, and it's almost as though if you can weather that and deal with that for a period of time, and maybe it'll come back the other way and there'll be some collectability. But as we were discussing just the other day, we're still in a bit of an economic rut. People don't have a lot of disposable income. And the price of mostly everyday goods, including food, soda, and any type of entertainment, is going up. It's costing a little bit more for all those things every single day. And the wages for the working man haven't moved a muscle. So that's why the working man for the working man here, Brody, because I work just like a regular folk, but I do like to discuss magic cards and see where I can get an edge in on the market. And I find the reserve list is not a bad place to do it. It's very difficult to speculate on new sets and singles. There's two cards that I've got written about that I think are going to do very well into the future with some support, and we're starting to see some support come out in some of the new sets that are being spoiled. That one card was Spelunking, and the other one Echoing Deeps. I really think those $1-2 cards, especially in foil, can possibly have some good long-term playability in the game when you see a card that's in standard or is recently printed that gets an immediate jump to legacy and vintage, like a card like Luris of the Dream Den. Luris is kind of a good and bad example, but Luris got himself banned. He was so darn good. So when you see some of these cards that are new printings that go straight to eternal formats like Vintage, Legacy, and Commander, and they're also included in the standard set for a period of time, to me, it has to meet those criteria in order to be a long-term, stable speculation, if you will. Something that's going to rotate out of standard and isn't evergreen and is only relevant for the time while it's in standard or while it's in the current format. To me, it doesn't meet the criteria of something new that I would want to pick up many copies. Lands are good. I like lands because they're colorless, and especially a good land like the Echoing Deeps or something that could possibly be played in Legacy, Vintage, or even Commander. Lands tend to be very good long term. At least you can play them in multiple decks. What else do we got here from the stock desk here? The first secret layer drop 2024 has been revealed. Let's talk about it. Gaming Bob, how you doing, buddy? Much of the damage is done from collectability, and reframing from reprints will only make it harder for WotC to make a profit. Also, the stock market at an all-time high. Banks are paying high interest rates on savings. I don't think that happened to this secret layer is scalping. There was a limit of 2 per customer and a 6-hour window to order. I think scalping is not a function of the secondary market. Interesting. It's also going to be at 40K as well. Making Magic collectible again. Good morning, cousin Jimmy. Nice to see you. Hey, thanks for tuning in. And you too, Mr. Gaming Bob. All right, let's talk about the first secret layer drop of 2024. After returning from their holiday break, Wizards of the Coast has not slowed down in 2024. It's been barely over the last 3 weeks. It's already had a set release, a spoiler season, and announcements galore on their own. Any one of these events would be exciting enough. However, this jam-packed year is just getting started. It's kind of like pitching. This is I'm getting the Marie Antoinette sort of feeling from Wizards of the Coast, like the whole let them eat cake type of mentality, because like the people, like the regular working folks, the middle class, the folks that make this game happen, the people who play it, have been like beaten up so bad economically over the last 3-4 years that nobody has any money. So now it's almost like the let them eat cake mentality, where Wizards is just like still jamming and packing so many products into the marketplace, but like people don't have the means to keep up with this and buy them all. Just it's like the whole let them eat cake. You want magic? I'll give you all the magic you can want, but at the same time, the economy has been punishing those in the working class. So the spoiler season for Murders at Karlov Manor ended yesterday, and the first secret layer drop of 2024 was officially released, debuted by comicbook.com. The secret layer is part of the 2024 Winter Super Drop. Launching in just over 1 week, the hype train for this new release has already left the station. Unfortunately, thanks to recent changes, players can't afford not to pay attention. Hard-boiled thrillers, Jace Secret Lair. All right. Look at this. What have we got here? This is an interesting, it looks like a magazine cover. Yeah, the banks keep calling me to give me compliments. They say I have an outstanding balance. I don't know what that means, but I thought it was very flattering for them to say that. Let's take a look at these hard-boiled thrillers. Following swiftly from the Raining Cats and Dogs deck selling out. Now Hard-Boiled Thrillers has been announced. For better or for worse, the Secret Lair isn't another major commander deck that players have to throw money at. Instead, Hard-Boiled Thrillers is simply a regular old 5-card Secret Lair drop. Playing into the themes of Murders at Carla Manor, a Hard-Boiled Thrillers embraces the noir genre. Le genre noir, the dark theme. For this secret lair, this means each card looks like the cover of a classic murder mystery novel. If you're eyeing up one of the new pre-constructed commander decks from Murders at Karlov Manor, these cards would be certainly flavorful in addition. Hit the road, Murray. Good to see you. Thanks for joining here this morning. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. And we'll see you tomorrow night at Commander. I'll be there or I'll be square. All right, the past, present, the future all walked into a bar. It was tense. Thankfully, beyond just looking good, the majority of the cards in hand-boiled thrillers, hard-boiled thrillers or hand-boiled thrillers, right? This reminds me of the Hardy Boys, right? You don't think they could do it. Can't make MTG collectible again. All right. Other than just looking good, the majority of the cards in hard-boiled thrillers boast decent value thanks to seeing Commander played. Beyond this always enticing detail, the Secret Lair gives one card its first foil treatment, first printed all the way back in Exodus. Reconnaissance has never been reprinted before. It's an enchantment that says zero. Some of these are so hard to read. Remove target attacking creature you own from combat and untap it. It's an enchantment. You get to remove something from combat. Not a bad card. Gets around combat tricks that do damage to attacking creatures. Since this card has never had a foil reprint before, you might immediately be excited about the value potential. Unfortunately, Secret Lair drops don't exactly work that way, even with Wizards recently changing. As a result, the new foil variants of Reconnaissance likely aren't going to break the bank. Still, they're nonetheless a novelty that should appease this card's die-hard fans. Looking back at the Secret Lair spooky drop in 2023, Zombie Master, the spookiest one, was a similar situation. However, never received a foil reprint before. The potential for this reprint seems sky high. In reality, however, current foil prices of this card sit around $9.33. This isn't much more than the usual selling price for this card, and as it is, it's less than the non-foil Secret Lair variant. How much is it worth? Oh, Dire Undercurrents. Here's another 5-mana enchant, I believe. Where's my head at? What's Coach say? The core tenet for collectible is availability. Translate that as you cannot reprint into oblivion. This is very evident from the crash of so many cards. Until they believably address this, they cannot make MTG collectible again. Yes. Well, damage, there's been a lot of collateral damage, right? It's kind of very hard to. Well, it's not only that. It's like I say, the Marie Antoinette let them make cake sort of a mentality. It's like, you want magic? Here's all the magic you can get. There's more than you can buy, and then there's more than you can spend on. Even if you spent all your monies and all your paycheckaroonies on Magic, they would still release more products that you could afford to buy. But the problem is everything's been going up. Cost of food, cost of housing, cost of living, cost of driving, cost of fixing anything. Services and goods are costing more and more every time. So people have just less money left over at the end of the day for Magic cards, but they still don't take the economic sentiment into consideration. So, like, who's buying these things, right? It's really disheartening. So it's like a burden. Like, they just keep piling this stuff on people's heads. It's kind of sad. Thankfully, while the foil copies of Reconnaissance might be a red herring, this hard-boiled thriller's secret layer still contains decent value. The majority of this is somewhat unsurprisingly made up of Reconnaissance, currently valued about $12. This reprint seems like a great hit. However, the value may be lost. Since Reconnaissance has never been reprinted, the card currently has some serious supply issues. Depending on the print volume of a secret layer going forward, this could change very soon. Theoretically, this may cause the price of Reconnaissance to plummet, but we will have to see about that. For better or for worse, Reconnaissance isn't the only card in hard-boiled thrillers getting its first reprint. Originally from Shadowmoor, Dire Undercurrents is the new variant too. Initially, this may seem very exciting thanks to the $10 price tag. However, there's not a lot of demand. Seeing practically no play in Commander and competitively, there are likely few clamoring for the Dire Currents underprint. Thankfully, the same can be said for Jace, Wheeler of Mystery. While they may only be worth around $5, this Jace seems a fair bit modern and Commander play. Black Market, here's another card. Yo, Anger. Nice to see you here this morning. Similarly to Jace, though, Black Market also sees a decent amount of play. However, just in Commander, typically costing around $4. This card, hardly expensive, but with the Chase foil variant, does not draw some eyes. It does. With foil copies selling for over $115, there's clearly demand for fancy copies of this classic card. Last and unfortunately least, Obeka the Brute Chronologist is a card that I'm building around in Commander. This is a card I'm very fond of. I like this card. This is a cool card. This is right up my alley. So in Grixis, this is how I'm playing Grixis. If you watched my Tech My Deck video, this is a piece that goes into it. This is, well, I started with a Rog Silas deck as my two commanders, but I like the Stifle ability that this includes. There's a lot of cards like Phyrexian Dreadnought and a few others that have some really wacky, wild enter the battlefield mechanics on them, and Obeka can help you get your downside enter the battlefield stuff onto the battlefield without having to pay the downside cost. It can also even get around pact triggers, where if you have to pay for a pact and you can't do it, Obeka can save your skin. She can let you end the turn before that pact trigger goes off, and then you can just keep on keeping on. You won't get to play any spells, but if you can play at flash speed or play at your opponent's turn, that doesn't seem like too much of a problem. You could even play cards like Born Upon the Wind in that deck. Let's see. Obeka, a very cool card. If you're playing with cards like Final Fortune, or if you're playing with cards like, what's the other one that lets you take an extra turn? Last Chance. You get an extra turn for 2 red, but then if you don't win the game, you lose the game on the next turn's end step. Well, this can end the turn before you even get to that end step. So Obeka is included here. Cool card from Grixis. This is how I'm playing it. I think it's quite interesting. What secret layer are those movie posters from? This is hard-boiled thrillers, Gaming Bob. These are all cards that are designed to look like mystery novels. They don't look like Magic cards, I know, and there's some people who don't really like this type of art printing. It's a fact. Let's look at Obeka, the Brute Chronologist, worth just about 25 cents. It's a cheap card in Grixis. It can be your commander. I'm a Noir fan, but I'd get this set and put it in a binder. Wow, they got Gaming Bob. I will buy this one. Damn. Yeah. Lastly, and unfortunately least, Obeka the Brute Chronologist. Oh, look at this art on. I know, right? Like, I could go for a different version of Obeka. She's the bomb. She's my kind of orc, right? Rebecca is worth just about 50 cents. She's cheap and very, very and being fairly unpopular in Commander. I'm playing Obeka. So there. Very popular on this side of the table. I'd hardly expect the world of in terms of value here. Still only new fans, few fans of Obeka should be very happy indeed. I'm happy. I mean I like Obeka. What's wrong with Obeka? Right? If you do like I say, if you look at the Tech My Deck video that I posted just a little while ago, I'll show you my Grixis deck. And it's got lots of extra turn spells, lots of you lose the game effects, lots of when it enters the battlefield, bad things happen. And the other part about Obeka that I really like is that if she lets the player whose turn it is end the turn. So if there's some shenanigans going on another player's turn that's just turning out bad, you can give them the option like, would you like to stop the bleeding? One thing that I would suggest that makes this card a little fun to play is if you sit down at the game of Magic the Gathering, like this is Rito back, it just says the player who tap it, the player whose turn it is may end the turn. It's very good to establish a safe word with the other players at the table. It's kind of fun if you sit down, you're like, okay, if you say the safe word, then I will give you the option to end the turn. If something bad is happening to you and somebody's trying to combo off on your turn or do something that you don't want them to do to you or your board state on the end of your turn, we can give you the just say that safe word and Obeka will let you end the turn. That's why I think Obeka is a hilarious card, right? So you can sit down and rule 0. All right, everybody want to establish their safe word? All right, at the end of the day, while we know the value of current existing variants, come for the magic, stay for the spicy magic card discussion. At the end of the day, while we know the value of the current existing variants of these secret lair cards are unknown, this is all thanks to Wizards of the Coast changing their secret lair release strategy. Rather than being print to demand, as they have been before, this new secret lair will be limited run. And according to Wizards of the Coast, they're aiming to get as close to the overall demand as possible when pre-printing secret lair drops. Little sip of coffee. Now, considering they are the ones with all the data, this should be very possible to get the print runs right. Whether or not everything goes according to plan, however, remains to be seen. Thanks to this being the first new limited run sale, there's a chance scalpers will ruin everything. Well, I think we talked about that in a little bit in the comments section. Got some viewers here who have opinions on that, and it's not likely possible. As Dual Brain said, there's only 2 per customer available. So scalpers, I don't think that is a really, really true concern. Whatever happens, the hard-boiled thrillers and the entire 2024 Super Drop will be launching soon. According to thecomicbooks.com, the exact launch date is February 5th, 2024. The sale will last for around a month, ending on March 3rd. Currently, we do not know much about this Super Drop outside one other card. Releasing as part of the showcase, Murders at Karloff Manor Secret Lair, Gonti, Lord of Luxury. This was a card from the Kaladesh set. I think he's an Aetherborn Rogue, if I do remember correctly. Another card that was really cool in Standard when it would allow you to play cards off the top of your opponent's library. So Gonti was very, very interesting and very hard to deal with. Once that card is exiled with Gonti, you can play it for the rest of the game, and it can really kind of break up your deck if they get your good stuff. So Gonti is going to be releasing in the Super Drop, getting reprinted since this card is worth just 15 cents. Unfortunately, it may not be the most exciting reprint, but hopefully the rest of that secret lair will be better. However, we'll have to find out a little bit more. Let's read on to know. Love that art. Super Drop. Dang, that means even more money for Watsy. Yo, what's cracking in? What's cracking in, Mr. Cracking in Games? Cracking them packs and cracking them knuckles? Shuffling them packs and cracking them stacks? of Magic the Gathering cards? Do you like tracking the prices of Magic cards? Let me do it for you. I'm doing it here on the morning show. I'm discussing a little bit of secret layer super drop here with you folks this morning. We get some articles, and now's the time when we start to move and we start to shake in our seats, because it's time for the Friday recap of the week on the movers and the shakers list. Here, the list that you don't want to miss is the movers list and the shakers list. I love looking at these charts, seeing what's moving and seeing what's grooving here on the show with you folks. Let's go. Morning. I love this place. Gonti, huh? That should be good. I love the art. I love the art. I love the discussion. I love the comments, the chats, and all you folks who tune in this morning to join me on Friday. It's bloomin' Friday. Actually, what sound does a witch's car make? Broom, broom. That's right. Let's do it. And what would you have if you had 50 pigs and 50 cows? You'd have $100,000. Now, a lazy kangaroo is known as a pouch potato. Whole weekend of Magic coming. I grabbed a Pure Through Time Precon. That Cyclonic Rift is waiting for me as we speak. Nicely done. Okay, what do we got here, folks? All list. So we do Modern Monday, Tuesday Pioneer, Wednesday Pauper, Thursday Legacy, and Friday we take a look at everything that's moving and grooving on the Shakers list. Now, this is an interesting chart here this morning, an interesting list here this morning, and I like to look at these lists every single day. If you don't like doing it, you can do it on your own. Go for it. Head out there and just go solzinho. Right? Aproveitar esta lista solzinho, if you wish. Or you could, join me on the Magic the Gathering show and the Morning Stocks and Talk show, and we could just, look at this list together. Because when I look at this list every day when I get up, I want to see what's going on. Because, all of a sudden a price will spike on a card, and it usually tells me that there's, some gameplay mechanic that's really good with some card. And sometimes there's the bad data, some confusing data. I'm like, what is this here? Like this one here, folks. Why is Ghostly Prison up 3,000%? It's $577. This can't be right. We're going to take a look at this morning and discuss maybe why is Ghostly Prison up to $500, up 3,977%? No, I don't think so. That seems like bad data. Don't be trapped. Don't run out there and start buying Ghostly Prison off eBay for $500 because people will post it on the open market for that price. And in fact, it might mean that there are some listings for that. We need to arrange an Epic Commander Raids Day with Brody, Dual Brain, and me. I do like the Commander Raids. All right. I thought that was ending the show. Ha-ha. No, that's a different tune. Like a different outro music. That's when Ron Burgundy will come to the show and serenade us with some epic jazz flute. That's right. No, not until you hear the jazz flute do we get to exit stage left or right. Okay, Ghostly Prison. What's going on here? Come from Folsom Prison, right? Any Johnny Cash fans in the house today? That jazz flute got me, right? I love it. Any good old fashioned Johnny Cash fans in the house? We got Ghostly Prison. It's a little different than Folsom Prison, right? Back in Ghostly Prison, I hang my head and cry. All right, 3.1416% of sailors are pirates, and you can plant flowers if you haven't bought any. Just so you know. Let's look at this. Let's look at this. Let's look at this chart here. This is wrong. This is like there's got to be something going on here. This says this is up 3,900%. There's no way that a card from 2012 Plane Chase is worth that much. It's got to be a pricing error. Let's see if we can find it. Here it is here. And I'll tell you what, I've FOMO'd into some cards before. Now, Ghostly Prison is pretty easy to see. It's like this is a $12, $13 card, maybe around $5 normally. So it's kind of easy to spot the fake here. He's sus. This card is sus. This card is super sus this morning. There's no way that this sucker is 3,000% up. There's pretty easy to spot, but like say this was a dual land or a reserve list card, and you woke up in the morning and you saw it was up 3,000%, you would be like, what's going on? And I get the panic. It comes. And that's where I need to be like, why is this card going up so drastically in price? Somebody's trying to buy out the reserve list. I don't think anybody's likely going to try and buy out Ghostly Prison, but hey, you know, what do I know? I'm just a guy who sits here in a cowboy hat and a frilled shirt and looks at magic cards with you folks. So Ghostly Prison, let's see if we can find what's the anomaly. Why is this going up? Well, let's take a look and see what the card does. It costs 1 white and 2. It's an enchant that says creatures can attack you unless their controllers pay 2 for each creature that attacks. It's a good card from Commander. For Commander, it's an uncommon. So this is like a bit of a pillow forty type of deck. Someone's manipulating somewhere. Super sus. This card's super sus. It's suspect. So there's a couple of reasons why this could have happened. So don't get fooled, because I'll tell you what. Let me take a look at a card like this. Bayou. Let's go. We're talking about Folsom Prison, Ghostly Prison, Johnny Cash, Credence Clearwater, and Born on a Bayou here this morning. Any of those ring a bell here? Let's take a look at this card. It is a card I FOMO'd into once upon a time, and this is why. See this spike here? Look at this. Here's a card, Bayou. Let's go back. Now, thankfully for me, this all worked out in the end because this was a reserve list card and this is the unlimited version of Bayou. And if you look at this spike, I'm going to go back to 2018 for you. I woke up one morning. I looked at the movers and the shakers list. I did. And I saw this card, Bayou, spiking to a whopping, what was the price? $2,000. $2,250. So this is like, this can happen. I woke up one morning and looked at the prices, and this card was twice as it used to be. It was $2,000, and that made me holler. So I went to eBay and bought copies for me. That is what I did. I didn't pay $2,000, but I tried to find it for the previous market price. So when this type of thing happens, this could be a pricing error. It's fortunate for me that this is a reserve list card, and I was buying them for $600. So don't let this type of activity fool you. It's happened to me, and you know how it goes. I won't get fooled again. I won't get fooled again. Right? You don't want to get fooled again. Fool me once. What was the George Bushism? Well, you know what they say: fool me once, shame on you, and fool me twice. Well, you see, you can't get fooled again. I think that's how it goes. Let's try and find so this could be a couple of reasons. It could be a pricing error where somebody keying it in over here on eBay, instead of keying it in for $5, they missed a 0 and put it in as $507. I don't see any listings for it at that price. Another reason could be that a graded copy got sold, right? So how do we get this price spike let's look at the chart. Let's pull it back here and let's take a quick look. and see what we can see. First, a price spike from just like a couple of bucks all the way $4 to $1,000. There's also a thing called wash trading. Okay, so let's just talk about that. Wash trading is when people buy and sell stocks to themselves or other people in a group. So let's say, and it just washes the money back and forth and creates a sense of market activity that is false. Wash trading is illegal in the stock market. Wash trading is frowned upon. It's definitely a no-no. But that would be sort of like I buy a graded copy of this and then I put it online, and then I don't know, one of the fine viewers picks it up and says, "Oh, I'll buy this," and then they post it, and then I buy it back from them. And then we do that over and over again to decide, how many times we can do it and make it seem as though the market wants this card, but we're just basically buying it and selling back to each other. It could, and a graded card can do that. And then you just trade it back and forth to each other between two people, or somebody buys it from themselves. They wash it back and forth until some patsy, some Brody, some bro comes along and is like, "Oh, yeah, I could find that copy. I could buy a copy of that right now." There's a lot of market activity. The price is moving up. There's lots of sales on this card, but it's the same card being sold back and forth time and time again. And they're just waiting for a sucker to come in and snap it up. Don't be that sucker. Watch the show. I'll let you know the pitfalls and the traps that are out there that I know of, that I've been stuck in the snare once before. And, well, hopefully it doesn't happen again. It doesn't happen to you folks. The working people who work so darn hard for their money don't deserve to get taken advantage of with his bad data on some of these darn charts. No, you do not. Not on my watch. No way, no sir, no how. Won't let it happen. If I can help it. All right. Let's take a look at this here. This is what we call a head and shoulders. Now, I'm not talking about the card or the little game that you played as a kid. Head and shoulders, knees and toes, eyes, ears, mouth, and nose. That's not what we're talking about. We're not talking about the shampoo that Brody uses to keep my didgeridoo fluffy and puffy, or my beard fluffy and growing and strong and flowing. No, head and shoulders. This is going to be the stock term of the day. You see, when I stand here for you folks, let me just fix this camera here. Camera angle is important, Brody. Head, shoulders. Head, shoulders. This is head and shoulders, okay? We're talking about head and shoulders. Not that kind, okay, for all you folks that are got that something on your mind. Not that kind of head and shoulders. It reminds me of a good blonde joke, though. It sure does. So head and shoulders this is another, we've talked about the cup and handle. Speaking of cup and handle, let's have a sip of coffee. Benson says, "Don't be a nozzle." That's right. Oh, you mean that song I sing 47 times a day for my three-year-old? Yes, that song. It's a good song. That's the song. So we talked about the cup and handle, and it's not this type of cup and handle. It's funny, these stock terms and these patterns and these patterns that reoccur all have funny names, right? It's like a jargon. So a head and shoulders is an indicative. Good morning. Is indicative type of chart pattern that tries to predict a bull market to bear reversal. Tries to predict a bull to bear market reversal, characterized by a large peak with two similar peaks on either side, and all three levels fall back to the same support level. The trend is likely to break out in a downward motion. So when you see something like this, Brody just wants to put lines on charts. This is indicative of a downward price trajectory. So like and then heading down this way. It looks like, just like that. It looks like a shoulder, a head, and another shoulder. If you see that pattern, like a lot of these charts and these symbols and these terms, hindsight is 2020, right? Like it's very easy to look back and say, "Oh yeah, there's that pattern," but it's also very difficult to speculate and say, "I see this pattern coming," or "What does this pattern mean?" Or you see the chart moving in some direction, you go, "Is this a good thing or is this a bad thing?" Now, Magic cards can kind of be a weird one because you don't know what sets are coming out. But if the market is pretty stable and things are moving along the way they should without any wild buyouts or too much card synergy coming on with the reserve list, this is a way to identify some patterns and build yourself a little bit of a knowledge on these charts. Let's take a look at Mock Sapphire, the second from the top here this morning on the movers and the shakers. An expensive card. Holy fuck. Cup and handle, nozzle, pennant, and now head and shoulders. We need an entire infinite loop. Looking down on a valley. Sounds like something a coder can whip up. And that trading is exactly the MTG market for old cards, right? Rush trading. No one is buying a graded ghostly prison. No, they are not. Not today. Brody, are you chasing some hoodoo there? Just catching up in the comments here for you folks. Here's an expensive card. So the Ghostly Prison we saw number one, I would say that's an outlier. That's like something that don't make any sense. It shouldn't be on the number one slot, but it's not like anybody over at the Gfish site actually monitors this list and says, "Hey, we could be doing some damage to people's wallets if they follow this list." Or all of a sudden you get up and you're like, "My Ghostly Prison is worth $500." Let's look at the chart on Mock Sapphire. Let's see what we can see. If we can find a head and shoulders here. Interesting. Let's make some lines on chart. So very stable. If you had bought any of the mocks in pre-2017, the price was about $1,200 to $2,000. Since then, things have changed, and now these old school and reserve list vintage staples are very, very expensive. This thing hit $10,000 and it's been trending down for quite some time. Now, I need me a mock Sapphire. Holy whoa, mommy, look at that. Looking down on a valley, right? How low can this go? Well, this is quite interesting because, like we talked about earlier, like there's people who don't have, like, we are choking on new products all the time. There's just so many of them coming out there. Wizards wants people to buy the new stuff, and we already know that there's not a lot of excess funds left over after food, rent, gas for the car, clothing, basic day-to-day necessities. So where are you going to, and then you buy a couple of new Magic sets. So where are you going to come up with the $5,000 to pick up yourself a Mock Sapphire? That's why we're seeing this chart start heading in this direction. And we're going to need like a good 2 to 3 years of decent economy. And when we look at our chart of the other day with periods to make money, that's going to be about 2026 when we start to see people have a little bit of more money kicking around to take a holiday, maybe a vacation, maybe buy some Christmas presents. And that's what people are hoping for. There's not a lot of people taking holidays. If they are, they're just taking time off and sticking around the house. I know a lot of people aren't going anywhere. They're not traveling. Some people used to take 1 or 2 trips a year. And I know that the people that I talk to, the working men, the working women, and the working folks in the world who work hard for their money aren't doing that anymore. They're not taking extra vacations. They're not taking extra trips. They're buckling down. They're saying it's going to be a little bit of a bumpy road ahead of us for the next couple of years. And we're not buying any copies of Mock Sapphire because it's, 10,000 seems ridiculous. So it's going to be a couple more years, I think, at least to the end of this year, coming into 2025 and the end of 2025, 26, before some of this economic stuff figures itself out and people start to get things reset and rebalance, and people start to get a little bit more disposable income. Because let's face it, who's buying Mock Sapphire at $10,000? Card Kingdom got no copies listed. Very, very, very unfortunate for them. They don't have any copies right now. Here's a card. I like this card. Decent card. Some expensive stuff on the reserve list. Or this isn't even a reserve list card. Fast Bond. This card's seen more reprints than Carter has liver pills. Yeah, I want to pick up a Mox. All right, Masters Edition, Beta, Alpha. Is this a rare? I believe it is. This is a beta rare. Okay, so Fast Bond, a very interesting enchantment. This thing is it's ramp. This is like the OG green ramp card. I think there's ways to just like. Is it legal in Commander? It's banned in Commander. That's too bad. That's too bad. As a lands player myself, I always want to find a way to put more lands onto the battlefield. This card's so good. It's banned in Commander and it's banned in Legacy. They don't want you putting more than one land on the battlefield at a time. Let's read the card. When you may play as many lands as you like during each of your turns, Fastmon does a meager 1 damage to you whenever you play an additional land. This thing here, it's definitely played in Vintage, probably an old school place where you might find it. They don't have any decks. Oh, Fast Bond lands in Vintage. Here we go. Let's see what we're doing fast. Dryad Arbor, Elvish Reclaimer, Collector Oof. So some stacks pieces. The Courser of Curfix, allowing you to play lands off the top of your library. So this just wheels your deck into the band for now. It is reserve list. It's the banned reserve list. Ramunap Excavator, Titania Protector of Argoth, Ancestral Recall, Crop Rotation. Another great card that is really expensive in foil, even though it's a common, if you can find it from the Urza Saga. And then the Moxen, the Black Lotus, Fastbone, Volakut Exploration. And then this is a card that I think is actually quite good. Okay, as far as speculations go, so right now, I picked this card up. Okay, I've speculated on this card. It's in the Zendikar set. I just bought 5 foil copies of it. This card, and I don't know if we're going to get a reprint of it anytime soon. Where's the foil version? Foil showcase, foil, $2. This card's quite good. And when we're talking about cards that go straight to Vintage or Legacy, this is one of them. So a card that come out in Zendikar Rising, and then now it finds its way in Legacy and Commander. And we're getting here from Fastbond, but like this is a landfall ability. Enchantment card, 1 red and 2. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, exile the top card of your library. You may play that card for as long as it remains exiled. At the beginning of your end step, if there are cards exiled with exploration, put them into their owner's graveyard, and an exploration deals that much damage to each opponent. So it gets cards off the top of your library, it throws them at your opponent, or it puts lands onto the battlefield. This thing goes straight to Vintage and Legacy. So let's see, where is it played? All these decks and Commander. I bought 5 foil copies of this for myself the other day because the price has come down to where it's cheap enough that I can pick up some copies. I think it was more expensive. Let's pull the chart back. I think it was more expensive, and it was more expensive about a year ago. Let's see here. Yeah, on release it was $5 or $6. This was the hotness in Legacy lands for quite a while. Okay, people were playing it, finding ways to try and break it. It's quite good. But as a speculation, Valakut Exploration is a card that I definitely pick up. I picked up 5 copies of foil version because I think, like I said earlier, a card like Spelunking, right, that lets your lands come into the battlefield untapped, that card can be quite good in landfall decks. And as we see it, this Fast Bond banned in every format except in Vintage, and it costs $520. So let's look at the beta chart on some of these betas, old betas. Quite hard. Look at these spikes here. We got some spikes. Spiking quite high. Oh, that's quite a big arrow. That's quite a large arrow you're packing there, Brody. All right, folks. Let's see. Valakor Exploration. I have those in bulk. Very nice. Love it for my Omnath Commander. Yes. And yes, hot dice. That is exactly what I'm saying. I picked up the Omnath, the 4-color Omnath. I wanted to go with a 5-color Omnath. I did. Because the black mana, and I wanted to do some shenanigans where I can make infinite black mana and sort of use that to drain life opponents. But then I'm going to go more with the 4-color Omnath because I think I would like to add black. So I'm kind of disparaged of where I'm going to put the Omnath. I'm going to put the 4-color Omnath in the deck and use the 5-color as my commander, but the 4-color Omnath is pretty darn good. Yes, played with Omnath. Very, very decent. Decent enough card. But if you're playing in Vintage, Fast Bond could be for you. A beta rare, it's something. Now, here's another card. This is like a stacks piece, like a legitimate stacks piece. You use the 4-color one? Okay. Valakut Exploration, Fast Bond, Omnath, and Lands. Very, very cool. We're talking lands. We're talking Friday. We're talking movers, shakers. What do we got here? A stacks piece. Now, if you do this thing, I remember walking into a card store in Portland, le Tabernacle de Pendervale. Tabernacle. This card was a period of time when this card was quite expensive, even more than it is now, and it is still quite expensive. But I remember seeing it in one of those. I remember seeing it in one of those key games where, like there's a grabby claw and then the wheel goes around and then the key goes in and then there's a guy putting $5 bills into this machine trying to get it. And I think at that point we were heading to GP Portland. We were in a card store in Portland, me and Mrs. Alfonso, having a great time riding on some bicycles. And I see this tabernacle in this. And it's not the claw game, it's the key game. The key goes around and then you got to time it right, push the button, and then it goes in and you might win it. And I was quite happy to stand there all day and put quarters into that machine and try and get myself a tabernacle. I used my tabernacle last night at Thursday Night Commander, and I heard a collective groan from the table. Won't be playing the Milk of Magnesia deck for a while. Okay, well, little disclaimer. I'm the veil, just out of reach. So I also, okay. So here's the thing: if people are going to be playing Gaia's Cradle, then I think it's just fine to play the Tabernacle. Okay, Gaia's Cradle makes a green for each creature you control. So you got 5 creatures, you just tap that. You got 10 creatures. The 1 land taps for 10 mana. So like. Tabernacle is a way to neutralize that Gaia's Cradle for 1. That's why it's worth more. And it's a stacks piece. If you look online, because I was very, very concerned there, Cousin Jimmy, whether or not I was going to be spit on for playing this card, but there is, I do know and appreciate the sound of the groan that comes from the table. But in my case, we were playing against somebody who had a Simic deck, and they were ramping out all these little 1/1s and 2. They were playing, what's the name of him? Edric, right? So then they ramp out all these little creatures with Edric, and then all of a sudden they're hitting you with all these creatures and drawing so many cards. I go and tutor, and then one of the players across the table says, "Please tell me you're going to get that Tabernacle, because like this is getting out of hand." I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's coming down, so we'll play the Tabernacle." Then, if you want to take this one step further as a stacks piece, add Winter Orb. And then it makes it really hard. If you want to play land stacks, what do you call that? Magnesia? Milk of Magnesia? Why do you call it the Milk of Magnesia deck? I just want to know that. Am I missing something? One of them was playing Mill. They brought it on themselves. Yes. It's a fair card. If people are going to play the Gaia's Cradle, then I think it's totally legit that the person plays the Tabernacle. Okay? So then, if you want to, and then the player across from me was like, and I was behind on board. What we were trying to do was like neutralize the player who's like got Edric out, drawing 7 cards a turn, then taking extra turns with all this extra free mana, untapping Gaia's Cradle, and casting more creatures. We're like trying to neutralize this player because it's so far ahead on board. And then and if you're playing stacks, then you add a Winter Orb, so that players can only untap one. So you can essentially, the Tabernacle with Winter Orb, if you play it right, this can be a board wipe on a land or very close to it. Okay. The idea is to slow down the game to constipate it. Milk of Magnesia. All right. Do you mind if I borrow that, Jimmy? Because the thing is constipated. Milk of Magnesia. Okay. Yeah, you don't want to have any runny bum. No one likes a runny bum. No, nobody likes that player whose deck is running all over the place, right? Sometimes you need a little Milk of Magnesia. to slow that down. Yes, so Winter Orb, you can go and tutor for this with the Enlightened Tutor, and then you absolutely feel free to use it. Thank you, Jimmy. So Tabernacle, a very powerful card. It's a stacks piece. It's one of the more expensive stacks piece in the game, and you're going to get that groan. So yeah, maybe you don't want to play that. Maybe you give. Maybe I'm going to go back to the Obeka deck, the Brute Chronologist, the Grixis deck tomorrow. I might bring along the Milk of Magnesia deck, as Jimmy likes to call it, just so I can, have the option if things are getting out of control. I'm gonna maybe have that setting on the side, but definitely a way to slow down the game. We play a lot of games that only last like 3, 4, 5 turns. Sometimes they only last 1 turn rotation and somebody is comboing off. So in that case, like, you do need to slow things down. We have no restrictions on power level in our group. It's just like whatever you want to play, you play it. And like play to win, play to win. Like whatever you're doing, like play to win. And then like one of the other rules is like if you're gonna scoop, do it at sorcery speed if you can on your turn. So the Lands deck playing this, the reason I really like this card is because I used to play online on a console called X-Mage. I don't know if anybody remembers X-Mage, or there was another console called Cockatrice. So this was an online Magic the Gathering console you could play, and I didn't want to play on MTGO because I didn't want to pay money. So I just I would play test my decks on Cockatrice, and I would play test them on X-Mage until the cards started adding things that were too difficult for the programmers to duplicate, like the adventure mechanic. That was kind of the downfall to X-Mage as I know it, because they couldn't figure out the programming to put a card on an adventure and then cast it later. So that's kind of when I walked away from it, because some of the game interactions didn't work. Then Arena came out, but a free console like X-Mage or Cockatrice was really good, and I always played on there to tech my legacy decks, and I played against this Lands deck all the time, and it was just like impossible to beat. It was very strong at that time. So it really turned me on to the Tabernacle and saying, well, one day it would be nice to build that Lands deck and include a copy of the Tabernacle. It's quite popular in Lands, and even if you look at on there's a fella. Let's just go here, see if we can find Alfred. Can't seem to find him right this second, but there's a fella on Twitter or X who is like a very die-hard Lands player, plays Lands all the time. So every week or two they get an update and there's a new variety of the Lands deck that he puts out, and the Tabernacle's always either in the main or in the sideboard. So a card that's always going to see play, especially in Lands builds. What else we got here? Crystal Rod. Alpha uncommons. I don't know anybody who's playing this. Mill players do not deserve mercy. No mercy for the mill players. Well, there was a series of these from Alpha and Beta and Unlimited that used to say, let's see here. Whenever a player casts a blue spell, they may pay 1 if they do gain a life. 1 mana for this artifact. This isn't fantastic. There's better ways to gain life, but you got to remember earlier in the game, this was the way. This is one circle of the color wheel, and if you talk to Mark Rosewater, he'll tell you that breaking the color wheel is something that they try to avoid. And this was like one of the ways of balancing out the color wheel. There was one of these artifacts for each color. I guess the blue one is kind of relevant because you're playing against burn, perhaps, but no blue player is going to be spending their blue mana to gain 1 life when they could be holding up for counterspell. So that's kind of where I see this. We're got a copy here, $35. Oh, just a second, folks. Miss Alfonso heading out the door. She says, "Later, guys." So why is this card on the movers and the shakers here this morning? Probably just because it's an alpha, and there's always going to be some collectability for these alphas. Look at the chart on. Do we see a head and shoulders pattern anywhere? 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 Head and shoulders. Looking for it. You know, you might actually be able to make a case for this head and shoulders pattern here. It's quite possible that you could make a case for it. It's Thank you, Coach. What we did to our ABU and Arabian Nights and Antiquity cards was nuts. I still amazes that any of them are still mint, right? I was into baseball cards too at one point in time, and I remember playing knockdowns against the wall with baseball cards. And I liked Magic because there was like less throwing of the cards at the wall, but we didn't care. Like you playing knockdowns, and you knock down cards, and then whatever you knock down, you'd get to keep and then pick up your other cards. But we just had like a grocery bag, like a Safeway bag, where we just load all the hockey cards into and be like, yes, I've got more cards. We didn't care about like who was on the cards necessarily or how collectible they were. We just wanted to get more cards into our collection. I got started as a kid with bubblegum sports cards. That was funny. Well, this has been interesting here. Let's go. City of Traders. I got a couple of copies of this. This is $400. Like, this is another bad beat on the Brody's list. I did discuss this card earlier this week. I don't have too much to say more about the City of Traders, even though I did get beat up on this when I bought Ancient Tomb instead of City of Traders, right around when they were roughly the same price. I put all my Magic decks in a coffee can. Coffee is still in the can, too. I like it. City of Traders, a Sol land. I guess yesterday we talked about Crystal Vein, right? Here's another Sol land. This is where I would say, little Brody would be like, I don't need to buy City of Traders. I can buy Coffee and Cards are Strong. I don't need to buy City of Traders when I could buy Crystal Vein. It almost does the same thing. Because let's face it, if you're playing the Sol lands, you're going to try and make big mana, no whammies. Big mana turn one, no whammies, right? You get the Crystal Vein. City of Traders comes into play and it taps for 2 mana. And then if you play another land, it goes to the bin. So in that point, you're probably tapping it, playing another land, and then making 3 mana on the next turn. Crystal Vein sort of does that, but it gets you there for about $5. Tap, sacrifice, add 2. So it's almost pseudo City of Traders, but not quite. Of course, the City of Traders taps for 2, and then on your next turn, you get 2 more out of it, so you can net 4 in 2 turns on it. So it's quite a bit better. It's also on the reserve list, so that's definitely a way to make this card cost a little bit more money. But there are other Sol lands out there that do just about the same thing. Ancient Tomb is one, but here's where we get into a situation in Commander where you need like multiple singletons. And there's just only so many ways to get 2 mana out of one land, and this is a great way to do it. The price on this thing keeps climbing up in price. Look at this. Got like a triple bencher here, right? Look at the chart on this one. It's like a recurring pattern on the City of Traders. Look at this. It hit the $200 mark. This is in and around where I bought it. I bought the Ancient Tomb instead of the City of Traders. Yeah, I know why I do that, but I thought that Ancient Tomb was better. I did. It stuck around longer. But hey, mistakes were made, and I can admit it. Totally fine. And then in around Strixhaven, this thing took a high of for $400, maybe $500, and then Pabo, the Pyrexia all will be one. This hit just a couple of bucks, and then now it's starting to see a tick up in price. We may see this thing like float down again, but this thing. I'm going to tell you right now, this thing is going the way of the Mox Diamond. Okay, Mox Diamond started at roughly $200 5-6 years ago, and this thing is just going to keep going. Mox Diamond is almost $800. Mox Diamond will break $1,000 because it is a real Mox. Definitely going to break $1,000 for the Mox Diamond, and eventually, right behind that, I think that the City of Traders is also going to do it. How you gonna buy an uncommon versus a reserve list rare? I'm dumb. I make mistakes. I was trying to build Painter, and I was like on a budget. I'm like, I could buy the City of Traders, or I could. I didn't. I thought the From the Vault rare foils. I was like, I had foil amnesia brain. I had foil amnesia. I didn't like realize like. I was like, yeah, foils. These foils, they're like more rare and better. And like then I met Stefan, and I'm like, all foils are not created equal. I made a dumb bonehead move. And that happens. I make mistakes, but it's like the Wolf of Wall Street. It's like, don't judge me on my losers because I have so few. Judge me on my winners because I have so many, right? I got a video coming on Mox Diamond and Lion's Eye. I'm going to have to make sure I turn into that. Buy an uncommon versus a reserve list rare. The City of Traders, the Ancient Tomb was actually quite popular. There was a lot of decks playing it, and that was right around where Eldrazi was big. Reality Smasher. People were playing lots of Eldrazi in Modern, so the Ancient Tomb had a lot of support for it. Thought Not Seer was 4 mana for a 5/5. There was a lot of colorless Eldrazi being played at the time. It was very popular and very good to play the Ancient Tomb, so that's where my head was at. A lot of hype around the Ancient Tomb at the time, so I was convinced that it was just slightly better as an investment. So I went hard on the foil playset of the Ancient Tomb rather than the City of Traders, to my dismay. And then we got the Mox Ruby. There's not a lot to be said about this, except for the fact that, like, the Ruby, this thing kind of ebbs and flows with the Mox Jet. Because it depends on the meta. If black is more prominent, then it seems to pump up in price. And if red is more prominent, then the red Mox tends to bump into price. And then, like, depending on the meta, the Ruby and the Jet kind of jockey. Yes, kind of jockey for that next best Mox in place. They should have asked me. I mean, this is before we met. I mean, this is like 2017. So, yeah, it might be worth it to pick up a full Exodus set for $550 to $600 rather than just the individual card. Can you get the whole set for that? Wow. Actually, you know, I've seen some places that have like a full set of Legends for sale, and I'm like, that's actually a good price. Like, if I could go back in time, like some of those full sets, decent pricing on a full set of like Legends. Like, and I mean, we're dreaming here, but when you compare it out, you're like, I get the whole set. It includes the Tabernacle and all the rares and all the legendary guys and everything else in it. Well, like, I mean, how do you lose? And eventually, like, a couple of those cards are going to just like outpace the rest of the set, and then you're ahead. But, you know, buying sets can be a little bit tough, fund-wise, right? There are tons of sets right now on Facebook. Really? Ruby equals free lightning bolts, right? I like it. What decks are playing it? Lura Saga? Of course, it's funny to see this. Like, the question always remains among vintage players. Do you just run all the Moxen even though you're not playing those colors? Or do you omit the colors that you don't run? It still seems viable to play the Moxen even though they're not in the color. Like, Oath of Druids doesn't play red, but it runs it. Mono White Initiative doesn't play red, but it still runs the Mox because that's how good they are. And Jewel Shops doesn't play red, but it's mono blue and it still runs the Mox. So, like, that's another reason why the Moxes are going to be evergreen and never a bad card. Expensive. This is a collector's edition. $1,250 for the CE. So that's the one that's on the movers and the shakers. Beta Mox 10,000, Alpha Mox 14, and the Unlimitado for $5,400. Quite expensive. And then this card here, there's a counterpart to this. I want to see what Death Grip is doing. Death Grip from Unlimited. Gotta go, y'all. Have a great day. Stay warm. You too, Jimmy. With that, it's a jungle out there. Death Grip, $3.75 for the unlimited version. Where's the expensive one? The beta. $43 for Death Grip, and then $85 for the Alpha Life Force. How much is the Alpha Death Grip? $132. So speaking of the color wheel, this is the counterpart to the Life Force. I don't know any decks playing it, but there's not a lot of counter magic in green, and this is one that says counter target black spell. 2 green for an enchant. It's got an embryo on it. Cops are at the door. Holy smokes. These are your movers and the shakers for today, folks. Scientists have discovered the world's largest bed sheet, but more on this story as it unfolds. I want to thank you folks for joining me here on the morning show. This is Brody Alfonso. Those around the world who are loving Magic the Gathering and enjoying tracking the prices of Magic the Gathering cards. Thanks for joining me here on the morning show. Ham Sandwich walks into a bar and the bartender says, "Sorry, we don't serve food here." All right, if you can't bring a friend to Magic, bring a friend to Brody's. It's been a Friday stream, if you know what I mean. Thank you all, and you know who you are. The Dual Brain, the Cousin Jimmy, the Mill Master, the MTG Gaming Bob, the DJ Longhair, Benson, Murray Cooper, Cardboard Splendor, Michael Superbacker, Marcus Superbacker, Mark Superbacker, Mike Superbacker, the Krakening Games, Hot Dice, Twiddler from the Twiddler's Place, Mill Master, MTG Hillbilly, Hot Dice, Huckleberry MTG. Appreciate you. Let's let Ron Burgundy take us out with some amazing jazz flute.
Premium